Oh, that's nice. Oh, there we go. It's so weird when there's a lag on this thing. I can't see myself on the. I can't see myself on my computer yet. Ah, there I am. That makes me feel much more comfortable. Oh wait, I'll turn the music down a little bit. Hello everybody, and good evening, and welcome to our late night reading session to get you comfortably into bed and snuggly and warm and happy. For those of you who are in Austria or in Central European time, it is now about 21:47. I welcome you to the evening. This is Vienna Theatre Project's 1001 Arabian Nights reading that we do with a couple of little things added extra. We've got something that I can tell you about this evening that's going to happen after the reading tonight, and something which we're going to put up tomorrow, which is a little concert, which is very, very nice. Without further ado, I am going to start the reading this evening and not waste any time. Welcome. I am not going to give a recap of what has happened so far. If you want to know what has happened so far, because now it's beginning to get a little intricate and a little bit too long, then please do go back onto our webpage and check that out, because that's where it is. I can tell you we are in the middle of a story which Scheherazade has created, and she has to create these stories in case you don't know the story behind 1001 Arabian Nights, the book version of it. She has to create these stories because she is married, unfortunately, to a king that is full of wrath for the female sex currently, and because his previous wife did a dirty on him, and that's the way it is. And once again, I can only say never have sex with your slave. It won't go well for you. Because of this, he has taken vengeance on many young maidens across his kingdom for a while, and finally he married Scheherazade, his wazir's daughter, and Scheherazade, to keep herself and her sister alive, is telling him a story every evening, and this story always ends on a cliffhanger. The idea being, of course, that the king Shahriyar, I'm always saying his name wrong, will then want to keep her alive once he's done his business the whole of the next day, so that he can hear the rest of the story. It's a bit like you having a cliffhanger when you watch Dallas or Dynasty or Prison Break, whatever it is, and they want to keep you hanging on until next week, so they leave you with a great big cliffhanger, and sometimes people even come back from the dead. So there you go. So we are right now in the middle of a story which Scheherazade was telling on the fourth night, and her sister said to her, by the way, we are reading from a newer version for any of you that have been listening in since the very beginning when we started on last Friday. We are actually reading an older version now, and the older version is much more beautiful, much more flowery, doesn't say Allah quite so much, which isn't a big thing, but actually it was a Moroccan friend of mine who told me when I showed him the version that we were initially going to use, said, my goodness, they do use the word Allah an awful lot in this version. We have found a version without, and it's very, very beautiful. It's a little bit, I'm going to turn the music down a touch. It's a little bit like reading Noel Coward or Shakespeare. You can't really veer too much off the beaten track, otherwise you will definitely get lost. So without further ado, here we go. So Shahrazad's sister said to her, please finish us this tale, as thou be not sleepy. And actually, I'm going to turn this off completely, actually. Sorry, guys. It's annoying me. There we go. So we'll start again. Shahrazad's sister said to her, please finish us this tale, and thou be not sleepy. So she resumed. It hath reached me, O suspicious king, that when the fisherman said to the Ifrit, I will never and no wise believe thee until I see thee inside it with mine own eyes, the evil spirit on the instant shook and became a vapour, which condensed and entered the little jar, and little till all was well inside, when lo! The fisherman in hot haste took then a leaden cap with a seal, and stopped therewith the mouth of the jar, and called out to the Ifrit, saying, ask me by way of boon what death thou wilt die. I by Allah, I will throw thee into the sea before us, and there I will build me a lodge. And whoso cometh hither, I will warn him against fishing, and will say, in these waters abideth an Ifrit, who giveth as a last favour a choice of deaths and fashion of slaughter to the man who saveth him. Now, when the Ifrit heard this from the fisherman, and saw himself in limbo, he was minded to escape. But this was prevented by the Solomon's seal. So he knew that the fisherman had cozened and outwitted him, and he waxed lowly and submissive, and began humbly to say, I did but jest with thee. But the other answered, thou liest, O vilest of Ifrits, and meanest and filthiest. And he set off with a bottle for the seaside, the Ifrit calling out, nay, nay. It's a bit like a horse, really, isn't it? And he calling out, I, I. Thereupon the evil spirit softened his voice and smoothed his speech, and abased himself, saying, What wouldest thou do with me, O fisherman? I will throw thee back into the sea, he answered, where thou hast been housed and homed for 1,800 years, and now I will leave thee therein till judgment day. Did I not say to thee, spare me, and Allah shall spare thee, and slay me not, lest Allah slay thee? Yet thou spurnest my supplication, and hadst no intention save to deal ungraciously by me. And Allah hath now thrown thee into my hands, and I am cunninger than thou. Quoth the Ifrit, open for me, that I may bring thee weal. Quoth the fisherman, thou liest, thou accursed. My case with thee is that of the Wazir of King Yunnan, and the sage Duhan, and who was the Wazir of King Yukan, and who was the sage Duban. And what was the story about them? Quoth the spirit. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to start that question again. And who was the Wazir of King Yuhan? And who was the sage Duhan? And what was the story about them? Quoth the Ifrit. Whereupon the fisherman began to tell. And here begins our next tale. The tale of the Wazir and the sage Duban. Know, O thou Ifrit, that in days of yore, in ages long gone before, a king called Yunnan reigned over the city of Fars on the land of Roon. He was a powerful ruler and a wealthy, who had armies and guards and allies of all nations of men. but his body was afflicted with a leprosy, which leeches and men of science failed to heal. He drank potions, and he swallowed powders, and he used unguents, but naught did him good, and none among the host of physicians availed to procure him a cure. At last there came to his city a mighty healer of men, and one well stricken in years, the sage Duban hight. This man was a reader of books, Greek, Persian, Roman, Arabian, and Syrian, and he was skilled in astronomy and in leechcraft, the theoric as well as the practic. He was experienced in all that healeth and hurteth the body, conversant with the virtues of every plant, grass, and herb, and their benefit and bane. And he understood philosophy, and had compassed the whole range of medical science and other branches of the knowledge tree. Now, this physician passed but few days in the city ere he heard of the king's malady and all his bodily sufferings through the leprosy which Allah had smitten him, and how all the doctors and wise men had failed to heal him. Upon this, he sat up through the night in deep thought, and when broke the dawn, and appeared the morn, and light was again born, and the sun greeted the good, whose beauties the world adorned, he donned his handsomest dress, and going in to King Yunnan, he kissed the ground before him. Then he prayed for the endurance, He prayed for the endurance of his honour and prosperity in fairest language, and made himself known, saying, O King, tidings have reached me of what befell thee, through that which is in thy person, and how the host of physicians have proved themselves unavailing to abate it. And lo, I can cure thee, O King, and yet I will not make thee drink of draught or anoint thee with ointment. Now, when the King Yunnan heard these words, he said in huge surprise, How wilt thou do this? By Allah, if thou make me whole, I will enrich thee even to thy son's son, and I will give thee sumptuous gifts, and what thou wishest shall be thine, and thou shalt be to me a companion and a friend. The king then rode with him with a dress of honour, and entreated him graciously, and asked him, Canst thou indeed cure me of this complaint without drug and unguent? And he answered, Well, yes, I will heal thee without the pains and penalties of medicine. The king marvelled with exceeding marvel, and said, O physician, when shall be this where thou speakest, and how many days shall it take place? Haste thee, O my son. And he replied, I hear, and I obey. The care shall begin tomorrow. So saying, he went forth from the presence, and hired himself a house in the city for the better storage of his books and scrolls, his medicines, and his aromatic roots. Then he set to work at choosing the fittest drugs and simples, and he fashioned himself a bat hollow within and furnished with a handle without, for which he made a ball. The two things prepared with consummate art. On the next day, when both were ready for use and wanted nothing more, he went up to the king, and kissing the ground between his hands, bade him ride forth on the parade ground, there to play ball and mall. He was accompanied by his suite, emirs and chamberlains, wazirs and lords of the realm, and ere he was seated, the sage Duban came up to him, and handing him the bat, said, Take this maul and grip it as I do. So, and now push for the plain, and leading well over thy horse, drive the ball with all thy might until thy palm be moist and thy body perspire. Then the medicine will penetrate through thy palm and will penetrate thy person. When thou hast done with playing, and thou feelest the effects of the medicine, return to thy palace and make the Gusa ablution in the Hammam bath, and now peace be with thee. Thereupon King Yunnan took the bat from the sage and grasped it firmly. Then, mounting steel, he drove the ball before him and galloped after it till he reached it, when he struck it with all his might, his palm gripping the bat handle the while. And he ceased not mauling the ball till his hands waxed moist and his skin, perspiring, imbibed the medicine from the wood. Then the sage Duban knew that the drug had penetrated his person, and bade him return to the palace and enter the hammam without stay or delay. So King Yunnan forthright returned and ordered to clear for him the bath. They did so. The carpet spreaders making all haste, and the slaves all hurry, and got ready a change of raiment for the king. He entered the bath, and made the total ablution long and thoroughly, then donned his clothes within the hammam, and rode therefrom to his palace, where he lay him down and slept. Such was the case with King Yunnan, but as regards the sage, he returned home and slept as usual, and when the morning dawned, he repaired to the palace and craved audience. The king ordered him to be admitted. Then, having kissed the ground between his hands, in allusion to the king, he recited these couplets with solemn intonation. Happy in eloquence when thou art named her sire, but mourned she, whereas other than the title claimed. O Lord of fairest presence, whose illumining rays clear off the fogs of doubt, aye availing deeds high framed, ne'er cease thy face to shine like dawn and rise of morn, and ne'er show time's face with heat of ire inflamed. Thy grace hath favoured us with gifts that work such wise, as rain clouds raining on the hills by walls enframed. Freely thou lavish'st thy wealth to rise on high, till won from time the highest whereas thy grandeur aimed. Now, when the sage ceased reciting, the king rose quickly to his feet and fell on his neck. Then, seating him by the side, he bade dress him in a sumptuous dress, for it had so happened that when the king left the hammam, he looked on his body and saw no trace of the leprosy. The skin was all clean as virgin silver. He joyed thereat with exceeding joy. His breast broadened with delight, and he felt so thoroughly happy. Presently, when it was full day, he entered the audience hall and sat upon the throne of his kingship, whereupon his chamberlains and grandees flocked to the presence, and with them the sage Duban. Seeing the leech, the king rose to him in honour and seated him by his side. Then the food trays furnished with the daintiest yams were brought, and the physician ate with the king, nor did he cease accompanying him all that day. Moreover, at nightfall, the king gave the physician Duban 2,000 gold pieces, besides the usual dress of honour and other gifts galore, and sent him home on his own steed. After the sage had fared forth, King Yunnan again expressed his amazement at the leech's art, saying, This man medicined my body from without, nor anointed me aught of ointments. By Allah, surely this is none other than consummate skill. I am bound to honour such a man with rewards and distinction, and take him to my companion and my friend during the remainder of my days. So King Yunnan passed the night in joy and gladness, for that his body had been made whole and had thrown off so pernicious a malady. On the morrow the king went forth from his seraglio and sat upon his throne, and the lords of the state stood about him, and the emirs and the wazirs sat, as was their wont, on his right and on his left. Then he asked for the sage Duban, who came in and kissed the ground before him. When the king rose to greet him, and seating him by his side, ate with him and wished him a long life. Moreover, he robed him and gave him gifts, ceased not conversing with him until night approached. Then the king ordered him by way of salary 5 dresses of honour and 1,000 dinars. The physician returned to his own house full of gratitude to the king. Now, when next morning dawned, the king repaired to his audience hall, and his lords and nobles surrounded him, and his chamberlains and his ministers, as the white encloseth the black of eye. Now, the king had a wazir among his wazirs, unsightly to look at, an ill-omened spectacle, sordid, ungenerous, full of envy and evil will. When this minister saw the king place the physician near him and give him all these gifts, he jealoused him, and he planned to do him a harm, as in saying on such subject, envy lurks in everybody. We know this, right? And the saying, oppression hideth in every heart, power revealeth it, and weakness concealeth it. Then the minister came before the king, and kissing the ground between his hands, said, O King of the age and of all time, thou in whose benefits I have grown to manhood, I have weighty advice to offer thee, and if I withhold it, I were a son of adultery, and no true-born man. Wherefore, an thou order me to disclose it, I will do so forthwith. Quoth the king, and he was troubled at the minister's words, and what is this counsel of thine? Quoth he, O glorious monarch, the wise of old have said, whose regardeth not the end, hath not fortune to friend, and indeed I have lately seen the king on far other than the right way, for the lavisheth largesse on his enemy, on one whose object is the decline and fall of his kingship. To this man he hath shown favour, honouring him with other honour, and making of him an intimate. Wherefore I fear for the king's life. The king, who was much troubled and changed colour, asked, Whom dost thou suspect? And then meant, Whom dost thou hint? And the minister answered, O king, and thou he sleep, wake up, I point to the physician Duban. Rejoined the king, Fie upon thee! This is a true friend, who is favoured by me above all men, because he cared for me, and he cured me with something which I held in my hand, and he healed my leprosy, which had baffled all physicians. Indeed, he is one whose like may not be found in these days. No, not in the whole world, from furthest east to utmost west. And it is of such a man, thou sayest, such hard sayings. Now, from this day forward, I allot him a settled solde and an allowances, every month 1,000 gold pieces. And were I to share with him my realm, 'twould but be a little matter. Perforce, I must suspect that thou speakest on this wise from mere envy and jealousy, as they relate of King Sindibad. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And that, my dear friends, is how we finish tonight's reading. If you want to know what Scheherazade is going to say to the king next, and it does indeed have to do with King Sindibad, then please return to us tomorrow at 21:45, and we will carry on with our tale. And I have to say, if I can show you, let me just show you a couple of things. This really is a very lovely. I read today that the first readings, the first time that 1001 Arabian Nights was written in a European country was in 1706 or something like that. Obviously, the language that I am reading has improved since then. This was a book that was written sometime. This is a version, I believe, that was written sometime in the late 1800s. Hence the language being very different to the version that we were reading 2 days ago. I do have, I'm going to show it to you. I do have this really, all the way through the book, there are these very, very lovely illustrations, which I will try to show you regularly. I don't know how many of you have been to the Middle East. I've been a few times. I have been to Oman, which is stunningly beautiful. I have been to Dubai. I have been to, where else did I go to? And it had a really beautiful souk in it. I can't think of the country right now. It's not the UAE. I've been to Israel, of course. I have been to Palestine. It is an area of the world rich in culture and very charming people, actually. I was always treated with the utmost beauty and charm. People wear often beautiful, beautiful clothing, and if you think that, if you look at an abaya, sometimes it's very beautiful when you see a lady walking down the street in a very, very beautiful abaya, and it will have some kind of intricate lacing at the bottom, be some kind of beading or lace stitching or whatever it is, and then every so often it'll swing open, and then you'll get a glimpse of some sparkly stiletto heel or something like that, which is actually quite beautiful and very enticing and very attractive. And the men in their white robes and the very, very beautiful headdresses is certainly something to behold. And once, actually, I want to say I was at Dubai Airport traveling to, and it was the other country whose name I can't think of right now, and I was sitting waiting for a flight to that other country whose name I can't think of now, and two gentlemen were sitting opposite us in, and I'm terribly sorry for my Persian friends who may be listening in, or anybody else who's Persian, Middle Eastern who may be listening in. I cannot think of me for the moment what the right white robe and the headdress is called, but they were both sitting in these with very gorgeous looking Armani roll-on suitcases at their sides, and one of them, I am not joking, had a falcon on his arm, and then their flight, I think it was to Oman actually, their flight was called and on these two gentlemen walked onto their plane, the one carrying the falcon on his arm, and obviously I assume maybe they had bought a first class ticket, I don't know, but I assumed that he was going to keep that falcon on his arm all the way through the flight. It was such a beautiful experience to see, something very, very, very lovely. So if you have never been to the Middle East, please do make sure you go. It is such a rich part of the world, and I highly recommend it. And I do apologise to my Middle Eastern friends when I bastardize some of the names. I must actually call somebody up next time I'm reading this and ask them to tell me what names to write, how I should write the names properly. Right, I wanted to show you a couple of things. I'm going to occasionally now maybe also start reading from Jonathan Livingston's A Seagull. It's a really, really beautiful book. If you've never read it, I highly recommend it. If you have it in quarantine and it's sitting on your bookshelf and you've never read it before and you're in isolation now, this is a beautiful book to read in isolation because it's very uplifting, but it's also very, very calming. And I might start, it has lovely birds in it. It has lovely pictures of it in it, of seagulls flying through the sky and in the water. So we might start reading some of that as well. Right, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen tonight. After tonight's reading, which I'm going to finish in a minute, I hope it worked, and if it doesn't, then you'll have to come back in 5 minutes because then I'll reload it. A Spanish actress colleague, Isabel Ramon, and I hope Isabel, I said your name right, gave me a monologue 2 days ago and asked me if I would put it up for her, and I said yes. It is actually from a British author, and actually if you want to click on the monologue, you'll be able to see who the author is. The monologue is in Spanish. I have put the written monologue underneath in English so that you could actually see what she's saying. But maybe you just want to either close your eyes and try and work out what she's going through. Maybe you speak Spanish very well, then it doesn't matter, of course, because then you'll get it. Or you just want to watch her and try to determine what her problem is. It's always very exciting to do such things. I once watched a whole Spanish, it was a Mexican, was it Mexican? No, Bolivian, no, Colombian, sorry. Colombian telenovela when we got stuck in a traffic jam from Ischgl all the way back to Vienna. And I watched on my iPhone a Spanish, a telenovela in Spanish, not understanding a word of Spanish. And I pretty much got all of it. And I can promise you the acting was very phenomenal. So, this is it from me this evening. Thank you so much for listening in. Really, really enjoyed doing this for you. I have nothing else to say. I will see you tomorrow. I wish you a lovely, lovely, gorgeous evening with your friends and with your family. Have a glass of wine, a cup of tea, sit back, relax, kick your feet up. I don't know, watch porn, do whatever you want to do. And enjoy yourselves very, very much. Thank you. And I hope your time in isolation isn't being too difficult and you're able to get out and go out into some field somewhere or into the woods and get some fresh air. I can highly recommend it. I live on the outskirts of Vienna, so luckily I am able to do the same, and I'm enjoying fresh air every day. Have a wonderful time, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care.